the other hand, people do a lot of fooling.
Yeah, I saw it. I did both. Last night during Shalashudas, I went through the English in Art Scroll, and then when I got home, I went through it through.
How did you do yesterday with the ladies present?
Very delicately.
I did.
He angled his way.
He wiggled around.
Bob was the only one who knew, not that they should. No, but everybody took, it went okay.
Oh,
You know what Bromwoods and Schwartz and up here in you got Klein, Decliner, and the drug.
well, Decliner would have no trouble. Nicer who has trouble.
Yeah.
All right,
Ah,
let's just catch
okay.
up.
Obviously, you got to the Mishnah.
No,
No.
and I'll explain to you why afterwards. Okay, that was my original intent, but I decided not to, given the perhaps ensuing discussion.
Text.
Okay, year of learning, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Savatova, Bad Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends of Nina Monester, Nechama Asna, Bad Yitzchak Aaron. Many friends of Stephen Vigdil, Zecha Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha Bas Rivka. Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister, Chaya Rachel, which they now spelled correctly this time, Bas Isser. The day of learning, month of learning by Melon Haran Haller in memory of his brother Yaakov ben Abraham, by Perry and Jill Meltzer in memory of his parents, Bella Bat Abraham and David ben Fishel Halevi. Then we've got, right, today being the 17th, right, of July. We have no days of learning either way. So, may Shama have an aliyah, crank Rafi about the Yeshiva Shamatzliya, Chobin Yisrael, good Ben Shir.
Mordecai. The note I think also talks about how old the guy is.
Well, obviously, you have to be. If it's a girl, it has to be under 3 in a day.
Well, we'll get to
And
that.
if it's a
We'll get
boy,
to
under 9 in a day.
Okay.
Otherwise, she only gets 100.
All right. So I stopped yesterday in the very last line of, excuse me, right, of Yud Amud Beis. Okay. Why? Because I did not want to get in with that crowd, the discussion on the Ilanit. Okay. And the comparison to a ram. Okay, I didn't want to get into that.
All it means is that the island
Unable to give birth. I understand that.
Doesn't have female.
Well, but okay. The point is, I felt.
But the wiggling you could do.
I didn't talk about wiggling really. I just said that one had the easy entrance for Petach Patuach. Okay, and I explained it that way. And everybody was adult about it. Okay?
You mean they enjoyed their adultery?
Not necessarily. Okay? All right. So the last line again, Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. What did he say? All right. In this case, he was giving here again questions of etymology, which is what we've had. And he cites an attempt at another example, Af Anu Ne'amar Ilonit. So likewise, we give an example with words etymology of Ilonit, right? What happens? Duchranit Delo Yalada. Okay, that therefore we compare her to a Dochar, which is Aramaic for an Ayal, and that's where he gets Ilanit. Okay, that it's a male ram unable to give birth. Okay. So that's, as I said, I just didn't want to get into that whole long discussion as issue. Okay, I want to just, as we go into the new Mishnah on Yud Aleph, second line on the Amud. Okay, I want to quickly point out a couple of items. There are some notes in Art Scroll in particular. I don't remember the exact number. It's on the left-hand side about the note, maybe note number 4, something like that, if I remember correctly, where it's going to have to deal with the question of why is it that the women are listed in one order and the verbs are listed in another order.
It's 4.
Okay, it is note 4, if I remember correctly. All right, I'm not going to go into it, but you're welcome to look at the note and on your own on that issue. It is interesting, worthwhile. The fact that Artscroll made it an extended note to try to explain it to its credit, okay? But I just want to point that out as we now go into the Mishnah, okay? So we have the following women: Hagioret, one who's a female convert, Vahashvua, and a female that had been prisoned and captive. I like better the idea of captive,
Like green.
okay? Vahashifcha, and a female servant, Shenifdu, and then it gives again a slightly different order, Shenifdu, that they were redeemed, for Shenit Gairu, or they converted, for Shenishtacharu, or they were released. And all of these 3 categories of women must be B'chutot mibenot shalosh shanim v'yom echad, under the age of 3 years and 1 day. Okay, ketubatan matayim. Okay, when the time comes that they are to be have a ketubah written for them, and then in terms of financial designation within the text, it should be matayim 200. V'yesh lehen ta'anat betuli, and there can be a complaint against them vis-a-vis their virginal status. Okay, all right. Now, the Gemara is going to have a number of issues with this Mishnah. First example, Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, Ger Katan, Matpilin Oto al Dat Beitin. Okay, a convert that is a minor, and here we're talking about very young child. Okay,
It doesn't matter, right?
okay, but we're going to get to that topic, okay, shortly. We immerse him based on the view of the Beit Din. Okay, my Kamashmalan, what are we learning from this? In other words, what is Rav Huna trying to tell us that's unique about his statement, right? Dizechut hulo, that it's a privilege for him. Okay, that's how I'll translate zechut right now. Okay,
Benefit is a better word.
well, it could be. Okay, v'zachin la'adav shelo b'fanav, and the rabbis have a principle that we can benefit or do a privilege for a person, even not in their presence, without their knowledge. Okay, Tanena, as we learned previously, zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav, ve'ein chavin la'adam shelo b'fanav, that we are able to do a privilege or a benefit for a person, not in his awareness, in front of him, but we don't cause a chov, a requirement, a obligation on a person without his knowledge. Mahu detema. So what are you saying here? And some texts will have goy, some texts will have oved kochavim, behefkera nechale. Okay, that the Gentile prefers to have the ability to be free and easy in his sexual activities, okay, as opposed to being constrained by Jewish religious law. Okay, I'll put it that way. Daha kaimelan de eved vadai behefkera nechale. Why? Because we maintain that certainly a servant, okay, clearly prefers a licentious, okay, a easy sexual lifestyle, okay,
Time off.
okay, in this situation. Okay, Kamash Malan comes to teach us that that's the case.
That's not the case.
Okay, well, wait a second. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that that may not necessarily be exactly the same parallel to compare the Gentile to the Evid. Why? Why is that the case? Dahani Mili, here what were we talking about? Gadol to Ta'am de Isura. Okay, where we're dealing with only a situation of an adult who has already had the benefit of such activities.
Sexual experience.
Okay, aval katan, but a minor zichut hulo. It is a privilege or a benefit for him to become Jewish. So the Gemara then says, Lema Messiah. Let us say then that our Mishnah seems to support this view. Namely, says our Mishnah, Hagioret v'hashvuya v'hashivcha, these three statuses of women, shenifdu for shenit gairu for shenish tachraru, that they were redeemed, converted, or released, so long as it was done, pechutot mibnot shalosh shanim v'yom echad, when they were below 3 years and a day. Ma'ilav, is it not the itbelinhu al dad beitin, that they were immersed based on the view, on the,
Authority.
okay, you can say the authority on the jurisdiction, okay, of the court? Lo, says the Gemara. Hachabamayas kina. This is what we're dealing with. Beger, an adult convert, okay, who was a male. Shenit gairu banav uvnotav imo, that his sons and his daughters converted along with him. Why? Denechalaho b'mai da'avid avuhu, because it was comfortable or appropriate for them to do in a similar manner as was done by their father. Okay? Amar Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef says, Higdulo yicholim limchot. When they reach an age of maturity, they are able to protest. Okay, now what's going to happen is the Gemara is going to have a little bit of a problem with what Rav Yosef just said. Okay, Eitive Abaye. First, we see Abaye is going to challenge him. Okay, hold on a second. Abaye says, citing another text, Hagioret v'hashvuya v'hashivcha, precisely our Mishnah, citing these three women statuses, shenifdu v'shenit gairu v'shenish tachru, they were either redeemed or converted or freed, so long as pechutot mibnot shlosh shanim v'yom echad, when they were younger than 3 years and a day. Ketubatan matayim, we say that their ketubah is 200. Ve'isal gadata, and if you might say, higdilo yicholim limchot, that when they reach an age of majority, they are able to protest. What happens? Yahavinin la ketubah da'azla ve'achla begiyuta. Are you going to say then that we're going to pay them, give them this ketubah, this amount of money, da'azla, and then they're going to put Judaism aside, they're going to leave Judaism, right? And then consume this money in their Gentile status? Is that what you're saying? Okay, so the Gemara says, Lechi Gadla, when they reach the age of majority. So the Gemara challenges again. Lechi
They don't
Gadla.
give them the money until they reach the age of
Okay.
majority.
Yeah, they don't get the money until after their
Okay.
majority.
All right, well, hold on a second. Lechi Gadla nami mecham yanafta. If you're going to say, that's how I wanted to phrase it. If you're going to say that they don't receive the money till the age of the majority, then again, they're going to be able to protest,
And walk off.
okay, and walk away, right? Okay. Kevan shehigdila sha'a achat, answers the Gemara. Once, however, they've reached the age of majority for a minimum period of time, okay, velo michata, and they made no protest, shuv eina yichola limchot, then they are no longer able to protest. Okay, what happens? Still a challenge to Rav Hu,
They can still protest, but it's not retroactive.
well, we'll see.
No.
So we still see again a challenge to Rav Yosef, who said this whole business of being able to protest, right? We saw it by Abaye, now Rava. Okay, what happens? Well, let's hold on, Zev. We'll come back. Meitiv Rava. Okay, so what's the point? Rava is also going to challenge from a Mishnah. We have a Mishnah that tells us, Eile na'arot sheyesh lahen knas. Okay, there are women where a fine is paid to their fathers if the woman is raped. And they are as follows. Haba'al hamamzeret, one who has relations with a mamzeret. V'al hanatina, or one with a Gibeonite woman who's netina. Va'al hakutit, okay, and the Samaritan whose status is questionable, at times accepted, at times not Jewish. Va'al hagioret, and on the convert. Va'al hashvuya, and one who was been captive. Va'al hashifcha shenifdu v'shenidgairu v'shenishtachru, and also the servant, any of these women who had been redeemed, converted, freed, so long as so long as they were below the age of 3 years and a day. Yesh lahen knas. They all have this requirement that indicates that there's the payment of this fine to the person who raped these women. Okay, right? V'iyah marked. And if you're going to say, higdilo yicholin limchot, okay, this is still Rava's argument. If you're going to say that under these circumstances, they are able to protest, Yahavinin lan leknas, the azla v'achla b'gayuta, you're going to be giving them this money, that's the fine, okay? And then they're going to go, all right? And they're going to leave Judaism, and they're going to consume this money in their Gentile status. So the Gemara again says the thing, the chigadla, okay, when it becomes mature,
Doesn't get the money.
okay? And again, the statement is, L'chi gadla, nami memechaya v'nafka. If you're going to argue that when she becomes mature, that's when you're paying the money, again, here also, she's going to say that she's going to be able to protest and leave Judaism. V'kevan shehigdila sha'achat, but our answer is again, that once she reaches the age of majority, right? Shehigdila sha'achat, for a minimum amount of time, v'lo michata, and she does not protest, shuv eina yichola limchot, she is no longer able to protest. Okay? Now, what happens? We see, okay, that Abaye and Rava both objected to the statement of Rav Yosef on the ability to protest, but they did not give the same answers.
One
Okay.
talked about a knas and one
Right,
talked
right.
about-
So we're going to see what happens. The Gemara tells us. Abaye lo amar karava. Abaye really didn't give the right reasoning that Rava did. Why? Hatam knasa. Because he focused on the issue of the fine in the story of the Na'arot and that money coming to them. Hainu ta'ama shelo yehe chote nishbekar. Why? Because his reasoning was that he did not want the perpetrator of the rape to feel rewarded by not
away with-
having to
to
pay
Get away with it.
a fine. Okay? Rava lo amar Abaye, and Rava did not give the reasoning according to Abaye. Why? Ketuba hainu tama shelo tehe kala be'einav lahotziyah. Okay? Because he wanted there still to be monetary money written into the ketubah, so it would not be quick for the husband
To dump
to
her.
give her out in divorce. Okay.
After she becomes an adult, it means she's no longer able to renounce it.
Correct.
Once she reaches the age of majority,
Yeah.
and does not almost immediately renounce her Judaism,
It's as if she accepts.
she's accepted.
In other words, it's like a Jew wants to convert. She's considered.
She's considered a Jew.
Like
Right.
5 minutes after sundown. And Rashi points out, if she then behaves like a non-Jew, she's considered a Jewess who is a mumar,
Yeah.
and
Right.
she can be subject to Bezdin's,
prejudice.
all the punishments of Bezdin.
Right.
So
Rashi
she's
goes into
100% Jewish.
Rashi goes into a little additional information, okay, beyond what the Gemara is simply implying, to be able to tell us what
that she's really fully Jewish.
what is her status, and that in that case, right? Okay. Just the inyane dioma, not but a practical issue. Dealing sometimes with situations where family would have adopted a child. Okay, the halach, as far as I remember, is fairly similar in that situation. That
It's exactly the same.
okay, is that the child must be questioned. Okay,
At 13, if
at
it's a
the
boy,
bar
or at
mitzvah
12.
or at 12 as a girl. Right.
There's a
Okay.
beautiful story about
Mhm.
a Geyoris who converts with their children, and their family has the most extraordinary Shabbosim ever. And the Chashuv Yid was a guest. So he said, I never saw such a beautiful Shabbos. And she says, well, look, it's in my own self-interest. If my kids get to be of a majority age, they can opt out of Judaism. I do everything in my power to make Judaism beautiful for them, so they
Nice.
won't opt out.
Very nice. All right. Okay. Have you ever been involved in that kind of a situation? Yeah.
The kid, they do a tafastam bris on the child on his bar mitzvah day.
Mhm. Okay, a new Mishnah. Okay, in this new Mishnah, I want to emphasize, okay, that the term katana here is not like we normally might use it, but it's a reference to clearly a girl under 3 years in a day. And the term katan in this Mishnah, I want to emphasize, not like we might usually consider it, is a boy under 9 years old. Okay, we have to keep that in mind as we go into the next Mishnah and the Gemara. Okay, Hagadol Shaba al Haktana, an adult that has had some sort of sexual encounter with a infant. I'm still gonna toddler. Okay.
The adult male there is 9 years old.
No, the adult there is
A bar mitzvah
An
or
adult.
older.
bar mitzvah, no, right? V'katan, and a male under the age of 9 years. Okay, Shaba al Hagadola, that has had some sort of sexual encounter with a woman that has
12
reached
or older.
majority age. Okay. All right, you want to call it 12 and over. I was going to be a little more medactic, but anyway. Umukat eitz. Okay. All right. And the third category, perhaps. Okay.
Is there a category? What? Minor girls is over 3.5 years old. And an adult female is over 12 years old.
What?
What? Just, yeah.
No,
A girl over 3 in a day who is penetrated is considered no longer a virgin. A girl under 3 in a day who is penetrated is still called a virgin.
our scroll should have a note there that claims that if the hymen were penetrated when she was younger than 3 years in a
It'll grow
day,
back.
it grows back.
Yeah.
That's Rashi says that, but
Right.
it may, I don't know if biologically that's accurate
So
or
we'll
not.
look to see a Talmudology if he's going to
He
respond to
did that thing.
it. Okay. Anyway, all right, but that's the right. And theoretically, I don't want to say theoretically, I'm sorry. And then the Mishnah goes on. Umukat eitz, and a woman who has had her hymen ruptured by some reason,
Well,
a
it's
stick.
literally a piece of wood, but it could be riding a bicycle,
Right,
sliding
bike.
down a banister.
I don't know if they did that then. Okay,
Well, then it's mukas eitz if it's
Right.
a banister. That was
all right, yeah, but that's more direct. I'm saying,
If it's a wooden banister.
all right, right, but in other words, through some sort of other natural
Well, actually,
situation.
again, the halacha, they were actually talking about wood not riding a bicycle. They're talking about penetration of an inanimate object that ruptures the hymen. They didn't seem to think that they didn't ride bicycles.
No, but they rode horses and they rode donkeys and stuff like
Not,
that.
maybe not women, although Tzipora did, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ketubatan Matayim. Okay, their ketubah is 200, Divrei Rabbi Meir.
In all 3 cases.
Okay, that's the view of Rabbi Meir. But Chachamim Amrim, but the sages disagree with him, and they say Mukat Eitz, Ketubatan Mana, that her ketubah is only 100. New statement, Bitula, a virgin, okay, who unfortunately during the time, okay, his situation is such that she became an almanah, grusha v'chalutza min hanisuin, okay, in those situations, right? Okay, so she was married and then, according to one explanation, almost immediately widowed or divorced, but no bia occurred to consummate the marriage.
Even though they had Nisuyin, even though they
Okay.
had chuppah.
Right, well, that's the point. Okay, but the implication here is that something happened that prevented any bia after the chuppah. Okay, right?
But she's still not considered a virgin.
She's considered
She's still-
previously married.
She's considered married, but she could still be a virgin.
100. One
Okay.
month.
100.
Ketubatan mana. Her ketubah is 100, says there, right? Ve'en lahen ta'anat betulin. But these women do not have the occasion to have a complaint, a claim against them vis-a-vis their virginity. Furthermore, says the
Gets her
Mishnah,
half price.
Hagioret v'hashvuya v'hashivcha shenifdu v'shenitgairu v'shenishtachmaru. Our previous Mishnah, okay, in these 3 statuses, right? Yeterot, above the age, I'm translating Yeterot here. Al banot shalosh shanim v'yom echad, above the age of 3 years and a day, okay? Ketubatan mana, their ketubah is 100. Ve'ein lehen ta'anat betulin.
Nobody can-
And there can be no claim against them regarding their virginity. Gemara, new piece. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, he says. Katan haba al hagadola. Okay, this is the 9-year-old, okay, right, who has relations with a more mature female. Asa'a mukat eitz. He makes her like a mukat eitz, according to Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Okay. So in other words, if that's the case, is he reading our Mishnah not as 3 categories, but only 2 categories? Okay, everybody with me on that? Right? Ki amrita kame de Shmuel. He says, and when I said it, this lesson before Shmuel, Amar Shmuel's response was, Ein mukat eitz b'basar. There is no mukat eitz in regards to a situation where it is done by flesh. In other words, through actual intercourse. That we do not consider in the
Well, it's not
category.
called intercourse,
Okay.
it's called
Whatever.
some weird category.
Whatever. Okay. Corin Steinsaltz translated it, had a note there, and that's where it clarified. Right? Ikadim, right? Okay. All right. So what happens? Ikadatne. And there are those that teach it as follows. Ikadatne la lahashmata, to this particular lesson, ba'apei nafshe, with no mention of a person, or as it, on its own. Okay.
Meaning not referring to the Mishnah, it's on an independent discussion.
Without naming. Okay. Katan haba al hagadola. Okay. In other words, a minor, this 9-year-old, has relations with a more mature female. Rav Amar Asa'a Mukat Eitz. Rav claims, okay, makes her into a similar to a Mukat Eitz. Ushmuel Amar Ein Mukat Eitz Babasar. And Shmuel again says there is no one classified as a Mukat Eitz when it is done through, let's call it, human intervention. Okay? Meitiv Rav Oshaya. And Rav Oshaya cites a Mishnah and says as follows. Gadol Shaba al Hakatana. Okay, a more adult who has relations with this minor. Okay, toddler. Vikatan Haba al Hagadola. Or this 9-year-old boy who has relations with an older female. Mukat eitz, and a woman who's, right, a mukat eitz, ketubatan matayim. Their ketubah is 200, divrei Rabbi Meir. That's the view of Rabbi Meir. B'chachamim omrim, but the sages say, mukat eitz ketubatan mana, that the mukat eitz, her ketubah is 100. Amar Rabba, says Rabba follows, hachi ka'amar. This is what our text means to tell us. Gadol haba al hakatana v'lo klum. The older, right, the more mature male having relations with the toddler, it's as if nothing has happened, because we're saying that does not, the hymen will grow back, or we'll say there's no clear definition of sexual relations there. The pachot mikan can obtain etzba ba'ayin dami, because when she's that age and she's below 3 in a day, it's like poking oneself in the eye. Okay? V'katan haba al hagadola, and the 9-year-old who has relations with a more mature female, asa'a mukat eitz. He makes her like a mukat eitz. Mukat eitz gufa. And regarding the actual situation of a woman classified as a mukat eitz, what happens? Plukta de Rabbi Meir v'Rabbanan. That's where the argument is between Rabbi Meir and the sages. Now, Amar Rami Bar Chama, he's going to come up with another idea.
Rashi.
Okay? Machloket k'shehikir ba. Okay? The argument, he says, is recognized in her status as a mukat eitz lechatchila, before they're actually married. Okay?
No, she tells him she doesn't have a
All
hymen.
right. The Rabbi Meir medame la lebogeret, because Rabbi Meir then compares her to a bogeret, a girl that's like 12 and a half plus. Okay? V'Rabbanan medamu la lebeula. But the rabbis, however, compare her to one who has had some sort of relations. Okay? Aval lo hikir ba. But if he wasn't aware of it, okay, before the marriage or the engagement, divrei hakol lo klum. Then everybody says it's like there was nothing, and it's considered a mekach ta'ut.
No klum means no kisuba.
No, right. It's considered no ksuba, and therefore not only doesn't he have to write it into the ksuba, he wouldn't have
doesn't
to pay her
even the
anything. Right. Okay. The Rabbi Meir, amai medame lela bogeret, and Rabbi Meir, why does he equate her to a 12-and-a-half-year-old plus? Nidmaya lebu'ula. Let us say he should compare her to a bu'ula like the rabbis did. But the answer the Gemara gives us is Be'ula itabed ba ma'aseh biyadei adam. When we say that she's no longer a virgin, this is because there was an act done by a human being. Ha lo itabed ba ma'aseh biyadei adam. Here, there was no act done by a person. Okay? V'Rabbanan, and as far as the rabbis go, Adam damu la lebu'ula. They compared her to one who had had relations. Nidmaya lebogeret. Why don't we compare her, okay, to the 12-and-a-half-year-old who could still might be a virgin? Okay.
Is a virgin. We learned that with the
She's
Kohen
a virgin, but the
Okay.
psulas, it could,
the situation.
right.
Bogeret lo itabed b'ma'aseh klal. We're going to say that with a bogeret, no act was done with regards to her, whether it was human or otherwise. So that would tell us that a bogeret would still be a virgin with her hymen intact. That's what will tell us, right?
No ksuba at all that's referring to the money, but there's still a marriage document.
No, it's the marriage is canceled.
It would
The
not.
marriage is
In other words,
annulled.
he would. The idea. Remember, we said earlier that a man would not put out the money to make a marriage ceremony if he was not sure that he was getting the appropriate
He was getting what he was
paying
planned to
for.
get.
Okay, and so therefore, the implication is there would be no marriage. Okay, right. So what happens? Lo ibed b'ma'aseh klal. Ha, in this case, it abed b'ma'aseh. There was some
Something
act
happened to
done.
rupture her hymen.
Aval lo hikirba, but he wasn't
about
aware of it. The divrei hakol v'lo klum. And therefore, we would say that everybody would agree, Rabbi Meir and the sages, that there would be nothing.
So
Okay,
basically, disclosure is appropriate.
theoretically. Meitiv Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman's going to challenge, okay, with a Mishnah. Okay, he omeret mukat eitzani. She says in advance, I'm a mukat eitz. Vahu omer, and he says, lo ki ela drusat ishat. And he says, no, okay, you were
Used by a man.
could be used that phrase.
Trampled on by a
I know
man.
trampled is a direct translation, but you had relations with somebody. Rabban Gamliel, the Rabbi Eliezer, Omrim ne'emenet. The two of them say she is believed, and therefore we can't say divrei hakol v'lo klum. That's the challenge there. Ella Amar Rava, says Rava as follows: Bein hikirba, bein lo hikirba. Whether he was aware of it or not aware of it. The Rabbi Meir Matayim, the Rabbanan, Rabbi Meir still holds that the ketubah would be 200. The Rabbanan, but as for the rabbis, hikirba mana, if he was aware, the ketubah would be 100. Lo hikirba, if he wasn't aware, velo klum, then it would be nothing. So what happens, says the Gemara? V'hadar be Rava, and Rava recanted his view. The Tanya, as taught in the following: Ketzad hotzaat shem ra. What is the situation when we say someone speaks slander in regards to a marriage virgin situation. Bala Beit Din V'ama, he comes to the court and speaks to the father of the bride and says to her, Ploni, lo matzati lebitcha betulim. I didn't find that your daughter was a virgin. Im yesh edim shezinta tachtam. If there are witnesses that can testify that she had relations while she was in the engaged status, betrothed status, the arusa, yesh la k'tuba mana. Okay, she could have a k'tuba of 100. Im yesh edim shezinta tachtav batskilahi. What do you mean saying that she would get a mana, a k'tuba of 100? Shouldn't she get stoned because she committed adultery? Okay, hachikama. This is what it means to tell us. Im yesh edim shezinta tachtav. If there are witnesses that come to testify that during the time of she was in arusa, she had promiscuous affairs, skila, she gets stoned. Zinta me'ikara. But if for some reason she had an affair beforehand, before she became engaged, betrothed, yesh la k'tuba mana, she could have a k'tuba of a mana. V'amar Rav Chia bar Avin, Amar Rav Sheshet. Rav Chia bar Avin, the name of Rav Sheshet, says, Zot omeret, kansa b'cheskat betula. Could be then that if he brings her into his home under the supposition that she's a virgin, v'nimtzeit ba'ula, and he finds out that she's not, yesh la k'tuba mana, she has a k'tuba of a mana. Umetiv Rav Nachman. However, Rav Nachman challenges and says as follows, with the following Mishnah: Hanose et isha v'lo matzala betulim, one who marries a woman and finds she's not a virgin. He omeret, she says, Misha arastani ne'anasti v'nis tachfa sadehu. After I was betrothed or engaged, I was raped.
In a place where I couldn't
Okay.
yell out.
Right? Whatever the situation. V'nistafcha sadehu, and your field is ruined. In other words, tough luck.
It's not your fault. It's not my fault.
All right? It happened. It was beyond my control.
It's your mazel, your
Yeah.
field, your
Right?
mazel.
Right? V'hu omer, but he says low key. No, because ela ad shelo irastich vaya mechi mekach taut. Okay? No, it could have been up till before I engaged you, and therefore I have an inappropriate acquisition here. Velit leklau, and maybe she won't get anything. In other words, there won't be any money. Va'amar laho Rav Chia bar Avin. And Rav Chia bar Avin says, Efshar Rav Amran v'chol gedolei hador yadvei. Is it possible that Rav Amram and all the great sages of that generation were sitting? Ki amar Rav Sheshet lahashmata. And they heard Rav Sheshet when he gave this lesson over. V'kasha laho, and it was problematic for them. V'shane, and then they could answer, Mai mekach ta'ut? What do you mean by saying that this was a totally inappropriate acquisition? Nami mimatayim. Also, it could be in regards to the amount of 200. Avamana itla, but 100 right, is appropriate for her. Okay, va'at amart, and you're going to say late laklav, and you're going to say she gets nothing. Va'amar Rava, and so Rava then says man dekam moti. Okay, who is the one who responded, namely Rav Nachman? Shapir kamoti. He responded very appropriately. Mekach ta'ut, when we use the phrase mekach ta'ut, legamre mashma, that usually implies a total rejection of the transaction. Exactly. Ve'ele kasha hach. But rather, there's a problem here. Indeed, taritz ve'ema hachi. Okay, give the following explanation, and I would say the following: Im yesh edim shazinta tachtav beskila. If there are witnesses that can come and say she was promiscuous during the time of the Aries, right? Beskila, she gets punished by stoning. Zinta meikara, if for some reason she had been promiscuous earlier, velo klum,
She gets nothing.
there is nothing to be given to her.
So it's a real
Okay.
matter.
Nimtzeit mukat eitz. If she's found to be a mukat eitz, yesh la ketuba mana. Then she still has a ketuba of 100. Vaharava hu de amar the rabbanan lo hikirba velo klum. But here wasn't it Rava who said, right, in
So
the
now
name,
this is Rava's new statement.
right, in the name of the rabbis, if he wasn't aware of it, she shouldn't receive anything? Okay, question mark. Elashmamina, that we learn from this, Hadar be Rava mehahi, that Rava recanted
That
from
last
that.
element.
Okay, now I'm going to start the new Braita, okay, and we'll just go a little bit. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita, Kansari shown, if the first husband brought her into his home, okay, Lashum Nisuin, for the purpose of marriage, V'yesh Edim Shalom Nistara, and she has witnesses that she was never secluded with him. Inami Nistara, or perhaps also she was secluded with him, Velo Shahata Kadei Biyah, but there was never an opportunity or time enough for them to really have relations. Ein hasheni yachol l'tan ta'anat b'tilurim. The second husband is not able to make a claim against her of virginity. Shaharei kansari shon. Because there was a first marriage brought into her home. And we're going to stop right there, and we'll start the new Gemara at the top of the Amud, Amar Rava. How are we?
Rabbi Green, what time at 2:00? Is it before mincha or after mincha?
I'll do it before. I'll try to do it before. The Mishnah Yomit and the Mizmor. Okay.